Hello. Oh, that is weird. Why can I? Oh, were you on mute?
Off to a good start.
Yes. Where is anyone else in the waiting room or?
Yeah, there are like 19 people. I was gonna admit them. I just wanted to admit you first and touch base.
Okay. Yeah, we just got out of the other room a few minutes early, so I think they've been waiting a little bit. I'm gonna try to. What I'm gonna do is email everyone from Michigan who registered, I think, with the Zoom link just to make sure they all
Great.
have.
Okay. And then in terms of kind of like emceeing things, do you want me to take point on that, or do you want to kind of welcome everyone? How do you want to do that?
If you want to take lead, I'll be here to help. But
Great.
if you want to take lead, I'll help get like this email out to everyone.
Okay, sounds good. All right,
Cool.
I'm gonna admit everyone.
Sounds good.
I wish I had music. Hi everyone, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. All right, we can give everyone just a few more moments to join, but while we're waiting, if you want to throw your name and, well, I guess you don't need it. If you want to throw your school and location in the chat so we can get a feel for where everyone is from.
It actually says the chat is disabled.
Yeah, I was about
okay.
to say that chat is disabled for some
There, I
reason.
just enabled it. Sorry.
Okay, now
I
we're
usually
good.
host redistricting meetings on my Zoom account, so I have to disable chat for members of the public. So sorry about that.
It's all good now.
Okay, cool. Now everyone throw your name, your university, or where you're located at in the chat. All right, we got Phoebe from Ann Arbor. Welcome, Phoebe. We got Mandy from Henry Ford College. Camden from Delta College, welcome. Looks like we got some good geographic coverage. We got Allie from Marquette at NMU, welcome. Hope the weather up there is cooperating. Nick from Saginaw Valley State University. Kate from Northern Michigan. Tony from Wayne State. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right, Landon, you feel like now's a good time to get started?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this Michigan specific portion of the Campus Vote Project Regional Summit. So glad that it's only us Michiganders now. Just so everyone knows, we had the strongest showing out of every state for the Regional Summit. So round of applause to you all for making that happen. That's what I wanted for this, for us to have the strongest showing, and lo and behold, that's what happened, right, Landon?
Yes, I think the closest state was Ohio, so there was that, but they were only about half of the registrations we had. So
there you go. All right. So moving on to our next slide, just going over the agenda really briefly. We're going to go through welcome and introductions. So you know who I am, so you know who Landon is, in case you don't already know us. Then we'll move into some folks from the Michigan Department of State and Bureau of Elections are here to provide some legislation updates and elections updates for everyone. Then we're going to have, this is really exciting, some redistricting commissioners from the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission here to give us information about the work of the commission and the current status of maps and the commission. Then I'm going to provide just a few Michigan Department of State updates for you all as it pertains to elections. And then we're going to go into a breakout room and have a discussion about campus voter engagement and resources. And finally, we're going to come back and talk about what we discussed in these different breakout rooms. And then we're going to give final updates for a close. So I think we can go ahead and move into welcome and introductions. My name is Sarah Reinhart, and I work for the Michigan Department of State. I am a special projects analyst with the Executive Office for Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. I get to work on a lot of fun projects in our department, including supporting the Redistricting Commission. I get to work on language access issues and youth engagement. Most importantly to this call, I help lead up our youth engagement team, and that includes college and student engagement across the state of Michigan. So super excited to be here. Landon, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I know almost everyone, but there's a few of you who I don't. I am Landon Myers. I'm the Michigan coordinator for the Campus Vote Project. So I work with a whole bunch of different campuses around the state. If I currently don't work with you, feel free to reach out to me after this meeting anytime. Happy to work with anyone in the state on getting colleges engaged. So yeah, glad to be here and glad to see so many familiar faces in everyone. So really excited for this.
Thanks, Landon. And if you haven't already, throw your name, your school, or where you are located at in the chat so we know who you are attending today. All right, moving on. We're going to have some updates about elections and legislation. So first up is from the Michigan Department of State, Alec Findley. Alec, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alec Findley. I'm an analyst with the Michigan Department of State's Legislative and External Affairs teams. I'm excited to be here today and to have the opportunity to share with you some information on election-related legislation that affects the Michigan Department of State. Under the direction of the state's Chief Elections Officer, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, the Department of State is tasked with supporting local clerks, the oversight of the voter registration database, the recruitment of election workers, managing candidate and petition filings, among other election-related responsibilities. Since taking office, Secretary Benson and her team have adopted many national best practices to strengthen the security and accuracy of our elections, including upgrading voting technology, improving the state qualified voter file system, and hiring our state's first full-time election security specialist. Simultaneously, the department has implemented automatic voter registration, online voter registration, and no reason absentee voting, all of which combined to bring about the highest voter turnout in Michigan history on both sides of the aisle in the 2020 presidential election. Now, throughout the course of a legislative session, Michigan's lawmakers will introduce, advance, and pass legislation that affects the Department of State and its election-related operations. My brief presentation will focus on several specific packages and pieces of legislation that would affect the department if passed and signed into law. As always, the department is guided by Secretary Benson's commitment to protect and expand the right to vote while making it ever more secure, or as she says it, to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So the next few slides here cover some legislation that would benefit the department and help improve election administration and operations. This first topic is an important and personal issue for Secretary Benson, as her husband was once deployed and had his absentee ballot delayed because of it. The department supports Senate Bill 311 because overseas deployments of service members should not take away or risk their fundamental right to vote. In practice, overseas deployment can complicate mail delivery and return. These mailing delays often risk disenfranchising military voters. Other states have implemented similar electronic return systems with strong security measures, and Michigan could do the same. The department believes the state could take a lead on allowing service members to return ballots electronically, but it is concerned with the current bill's exclusion of spouses of service members. Next slide, please. So this is a 9-bill package that was introduced last fall that would also improve election administration, as well as expand and protect Michiganders' right to vote. This slide details the bills in the package and what each one does. All of these bills have been awaiting legislative action in the House Committee on Elections and Ethics. And the department supports this specific package of legislation as it reflects the voices of election administrators and the needs of the state's voters. This package also aligns with several of the legislative priorities that Secretary Benson has committed to advancing. Priorities including ensuring equitable access to voting, expanding voter accessibility, and strengthening the infrastructure and security of elections. Next are House Bills 4132 and 4133, which the department supports because there are similar penalties for voting fraudulently in person, and the department believes penalties related to elections should be consistent. Due to the many changes in election administration in recent years, the department would like to see these changes made to election laws. However, it would be better if these bills were included with changes related to other concerns that clerks have raised regarding election administration and absentee ballots. Of course, not all legislation is good or helpful or even well-intentioned, particularly in this moment when so much mis and disinformation exists about elections. Here's some general topics that have come up recently in election legislation that the department has opposed. Next slide, please, Sarah. Limitations on voters' ability to submit an absentee voter application online. So as technology advances, government operations and practices also need to advance. The department's online absentee voter application requires a voter to have a signature on file that is associated with their driver's license. In addition to the signature, a voter is required to swear they can vote, and they must provide their personal information for their signature to be used on the ballot application. Also, a digital signature can be used only for the ballot application. The department has found no fraud with this tool and believes the current electronic signature security measures are strong. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. Another concept the department opposes is the limitations on the use of absent voter drop boxes. Drop boxes expand accessibility and ballot return options for voters, which is why the department opposes needless and unfunded limitations on them. Under current law, absent voter ballot drop boxes are required to be clearly labeled, securely locked, under video surveillance, located in well-lit areas, and emptied only by clerks and their deputies. Without more funding, these requirements would burden clerks and would likely cause many drop boxes to be considered deficient, causing them to be removed and thus jeopardizing voter access and convenience. On this next slide, we discuss some bills that limit voter access to the ballot. Removing Michigan's long-standing practice of allowing voters to use an affidavit to vote would disenfranchise voters, which is why the department opposes that concept. Now, these issues I've briefly detailed today are just a handful of the many that are introduced and make their way through the legislative process during a given legislative session. For more election or voting information, please visit michigan.gov/vote. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thanks so much, Alec. That was some really great information. Really appreciate you being here today to present. Next up, we have Brian Remlinger from the Bureau of Elections to give us an update about some rules, about signature matching, and about online AV ballot applications. So Brian, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, everyone. It's great to see so many students excited about voting. I was a law student in 2020, so on the other side of the table, thinking about all the same issues that you are. So I'm currently an attorney at the Bureau of Elections. The Bureau is the nonpartisan civil service agency below the Secretary of State's office that actually administers elections across Michigan. As you all probably know, Michigan has a hyper-federalized election system. So 1,600 local and county clerks administer our elections, which is the second most clerks of anywhere in the country. And by most measures, we are the most decentralized. So today I just want to chat a little bit about the administrative rulemaking process and the administrative rules we have in the hopper. So the administrative rulemaking process is a process by which the Secretary of State basically tells people how elections should be run. So it covers issues that maybe there's not direct legislation on, or existing law doesn't clarify, or there's confusion for some reason. And that's when a rule is drafted and goes through a pretty complicated approval process involving lots of things like public hearing, public comment, legislative hearings, a whole host of fun things we've been working on over the last year or so. So currently, there are two really important rule sets pending before the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, JCAR, which is part of the Michigan legislature. The first rule set is about signature matching. And this rule set specifically applies to signatures on absent voter ballot applications and absent voter ballot return envelopes. And this is just the general, when you sign something and you send it in, how does the clerk tell that it's your signature? How does the clerk match the signatures to make sure that they, are the same? The rules that we've proposed would set standards across the state, which are the standards the Bureau has used for decades, that are just to make sure that every voter across the state has equal access to the ballot, and it's not different depending on where you live or who your clerk is or the local processes. The second set of rules that we have pending are about an online absent voter ballot application. This currently exists in Michigan, but we want to clarify and enshrine it as something that will continue to exist in Michigan and continue to help voters across the state access the absent voter ballot process. This rule set would allow voters to upload signatures if they don't currently have a signature on file with the state, say through the driver's license application, and just generally make sure that the absent voting process is available to everyone who wants to take advantage of it. And aside from that, we're mostly just working very hard at the Bureau to make sure that all of our materials are in great shape for the 2022 primaries and midterm elections. Sarah, back to you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate you being here today and presenting. It's important to stay on top of some of these trends and shifts in legislation and election law in Michigan, because we want to make sure that when we're reaching out to our peers on campuses or engaging the community for voter engagement, or to make sure that they're registered, that we're not only complying with Michigan election law, but that we're keeping voters informed about how to properly register to vote and how to vote, and how to, whether that's in person or whether it's via an absent voter ballot. So really appreciate you both taking the time to be here today, and we'll move on to the next segment, which is actually redistricting. I think our commissioners are going to be joining at 3:40. So I might jump ahead just a little bit to talk about the ways that the Michigan Department of State is planning to engage voters and community partners through 2022 for the 2022 elections. I think this will be really important and applicable for everyone on this call, because everyone can do something, and especially if you're involved in an organization or maybe a university, you'll have a lot of power behind you and a lot of resources at your disposal to make sure that your peers are engaged. So this is our plan for elections outreach and engagement this year in a nutshell. One one of the things that the Department of State is really focusing on doing this year is making information accessible. We understand our role in the Secretary of State's office as being the highest and truest source of information. On the regional summit and some of the breakout rooms I was part of, one of the things that I heard over and over again is college students often don't know where to look for information. They don't know if the information that they're getting is accurate or reliable. So we understand that that should be the role of the Department of State, is to give that correct information that students can rely on and to disseminate that among our networks. That includes among community partners, that includes among the thousands of clerks that are across the state, and that includes colleges and universities across the state, so they can provide their students and campuses with accurate information about how to register and how to vote. Another thing that we're doing, which kind of goes hand in hand with that, is combating misinformation and disinformation. That was another really big topic in some of the breakout rooms that I was a part of. We know that misinformation and disinformation was really prevalent in the 2020 elections, and we can anticipate that it'll also be prevalent in 2022. Whether that's just false information that you're seeing on social media, or more I should say, like, harsher things like some of the robocalls spreading false information that we saw in and around the Flint area in Michigan during the 2020 elections. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for combating that misinformation proactively and reactively. Part of that proactive combat is kind of going back to the first point, making sure that we're providing accessible, factual elections information anywhere and everywhere through every outlet, and distributing that among our partners so they can broadcast it as well. We want to talk about what elections, like factual things about elections. What does a clerk's office do? What does a counting board do? What does a board of canvassers do? What are they legally obligated to do? Stuff like that, to try to get the message out about what are the facts. So that way, when people encounter that misinformation, it's not as believable, right? People know better. Another big key point for both of those initiatives, making information accessible and combating misinformation and disinformation, is going to be the translation of misinformation, the translation of our information. We recognize that Michigan is a really diverse state, and we want to make sure that no matter what language is your preferred language, whether it's English or Arabic or any other language that is within our great state, that folks can access the same information and understand what their voting rights are, when to vote, how to vote. So that's a really key initiative that we're taking on this year. A couple of the things that I added to this slide that I think are really relevant to this conversation here. We are in the process of updating our website online. We are switching over to kind of a new website framework. So it's going to be a lot more intuitive and a lot more accessible. In the process of that, we're adding quite a few updates to some of our websites, including doing an overhaul of our student voter website. Again, aiming to have that reliable source of information in an accessible way. And in this instance, specifically geared towards students, because we know you all have a lot of unique needs and circumstances. So we want to have that resource available for you. And then second is our democracy partners. Something unique about 2022 is that the Department of State is making an effort to work more closely with pro-democracy partners throughout the state to coordinate for addressing misinformation, for circulating those truthful elections facts, important dates, important reminders, and making sure that everyone in any community across the state has the information that they need to be prepared to vote. One thing that we've heard from people is that if I say it and I live in Lansing and I tell you, you need this, this, and this in order to vote, you may listen to me, you may not. But if someone that you know that lives down the street from you, or maybe someone that looks like you, or maybe someone that went to school with you tells you this is what you need to vote and you better do it, you're going to be more likely to listen. So we want to make sure that communities across the state are hearing from within their communities across the state what's needed in order to engage in the democratic process. So our Democracy Partners website, it's going to be a website that'll provide a lot of resources for sharing information about elections. And what's unique about it is you or your organization or your university or your student club or organization can go there and sign up to receive email updates about elections news, elections content. That includes like social media posts, flyers, graphics, videos that we're creating, and any other updates. We'll be sending those out via email, so it'll come directly to your inbox and you can really stay engaged that way. All right, so that is the Department of State update. Does anyone have any questions on that? I saw that. I know I go kind of fast, so I know people wrote some stuff in the chat. Let me catch up here.
And while Sarah's looking at that, I know we just threw a lot of information at you. We'll have a bit of time now to do just general questions on anything that you are unsure about or want to know more about. And if we have the answer, we'll get you the answer we can. So we'll do that after the redistricting session. So if you have any questions on that, great, feel free to ask them now. We'll also do a more interactive question session just to make sure there aren't anyone out there has questions about. So back to you, Sarah.
Sorry, I'm catching up on some of these questions in the chat. That's a great question, Phoebe. I'm not aware that there is a list of township or city clerks who are elected versus appointed on our website. That's something I could follow up with the Bureau of Elections about to see if that's something that's publicly posted on our site, but I'm not sure that from the Bureau's perspective that it would matter if they were elected versus appointed. So I can definitely look into that though and follow up. It's a great question. All right, it looks like at least one of our redistricting commissioners has joined. Looks like Rebecca Satella has joined. Commissioner Satella, are you here with us? She might still be loading. Oh, I see Dustin. Hi, Dustin.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, doing well. How are you?
Good.
Great. So
I'm just getting my camera going here.
Oh, no problem. So everyone, this is Rebecca Satella and Dustin Witches. They are commissioners for the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Commissioner Satella formerly Chair Satella and now currently Vice Chair Witches. So I'll pass it off to you. Just so you know, I have your slides loaded into my presentation, so I'm happy to control the slide advancing if you just prompt me, or if you'd rather share, you can feel free to do that.
Yeah, if you could just advance the slides, that would be fantastic, Sarah.
Absolutely. All right, take it away.
Yeah, so thank you for having us here today. As Sarah introduced us so kindly, my name is Rebecca Zatella. I am the former chair of the commission, and I have Dustin Widges with me here today, and he is the current vice chair. He was just elected about 2 weeks ago. So let's talk a little bit about the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Next slide, please. So the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission is composed of 13 commissioners. The commissioners were selected as part of a random selection process under the Michigan Constitution. As many of you probably know, in 2018, the voters passed a constitutional amendment that created the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. It passed overwhelmingly by over 61% of the vote, and it established a new process for the drawing of congressional congressional, state house, and state senate maps in the state of Michigan. And part of that process was the creation of the commission itself, which is 13 commissioners, with 4 individuals who identify as being Republican, 4 individuals who identify as affiliating with Democrats, and 5 individuals who identify as being independent, so they don't identify with either party. And so this is our current slate of commissioners that you have in front of us. And next slide, please. Our strategic plan for the state of Michigan was to lead the redistricting process to assure that the maps were drawn fairly in a citizen-led, transparent process, meeting the constitutional requirements. Our vision was to chart a positive course for elections based on the fair maps for Michigan today and in the future. And our core values were integrity, respect, transparency, and purposefulness. As the first commission that was established, obviously, we had our work cut out for us because we were the first ones doing this. We had to create our own procedures for ourselves and for future commissions, and make sure that we were doing things in a transparent process so the public could see what was happening for the first time. Next slide, please. So under the Michigan Constitution, there are 7 redistricting criteria. Those include, and they are actually, I should clarify, they are ranked criteria. So we have to apply them in the order that you see in front of us. Number 1 is that we have equal populations and comply with federal laws such as the Voting Rights Act. The second criteria was that districts have to be geographically contiguous. And all that means is we can't have separate little islands of districts separated from each other. They all have to be touching to be part of a single district. We have to reflect the state's diversity and communities of interest. And we can't give a disproportionate advantage or disadvantage to any political party. The next criteria, number 5, also dealt with political issues, which was not to disfavor or favor any incumbent elected official or any candidate who is running for office. Number 6 was to reflect consideration of county, city, and township boundaries. And the last criteria was to keep the districts reasonably compact. And so in the process of drawing maps, we followed these criteria pretty strictly and went through them one by one and tried to make sure that we had maps that were as compliant and adhered as closely to these criteria as possible. Next slide, please. So before we were allowed to draw maps, we had to have public hearings. We started out with 10 public hearings, or actually we were supposed to have 10 public hearings. We had 16, and we had those throughout the state of Michigan. We went all the way up to the Upper Peninsula to Marquette. We went all the way down to Detroit. We went out to Grand Rapids, and we just met with the public and heard testimony about where lines should be drawn and what communities of interest were important to particular people. And after we had that first round of public hearings, we started drawing the maps themselves. And once we had created sample maps, we actually created several. It wasn't just one set of maps. We created multiple map options for people in the state of Michigan to look at. And then we moved on to our second round of public hearings. So if you could advance the slide, that would be fantastic. So after we did the first round, we produced maps, we put them out there for the public to see, and then we had a second round of public hearings. This time we went to 5 different cities and spoke to people in 5 different areas and solicited comments about the maps that we had drawn. And at this point, I will hand it over to my capable fellow commissioner, Commissioner Riches.
Hello, everyone. As stated, and thanks for the introduction, I'm the newly elected vice chair of the Michigan Independent Citizen Redistricting Commission. Continuing on from the announcement of our first round of public hearings that we had, starting May 6th in 2021, finally ending December 28th, 2021, which was when we were starting the voting process in Lansing. We heard from 2,141 in-person comments at meetings and public hearings, 1,023 written and emailed comments, 1,369 virtual and phone comments that were held through Zoom, 7,580 comments that the public put on our public comment portal, and 17,371 comments through the mapping comment portal, which is where individuals could look at the maps that we were proposing, drop a pin in a certain area, and then leave comments for everyone to see whether they felt neutral about it, disliked, or liked. And then the pins would be green, red, or yellow, depending on how you choose to classify your comments. So this represents about a grand total of nearly 30,000 public comments that were given to us in our inaugural commission from the residents of the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. So starting the mapping process, we were all new to this. We really didn't know how we were going to start. We took some advice from our mapping vendors. And we decided to work in these particular regions. And these weren't districts. We split Michigan into 10 regions, all the way from the Upper Peninsula to Southeast Michigan. And we utilized 10 regions to create all of the districts for the congressional, House, and Senate as we were considering the public comments that were provided to us. Now, it is important to note that these were not boundary lines. We were allowed to go past these lines when drawing and creating our districts. These were just starting areas for us. Next slide, please. So the commission shall follow the following procedure in adopting a plan. So before we vote to adopt a plan, the commission has to ensure that the plan is tested using appropriate technology for compliance with the redistricting criteria. Before voting to, oops, sorry, I hit a button. Before voting to adopt the plan, the commission has to provide a notice for each plan that will be voted on and provide at least 45 days of public comment of the proposed plan or plans. Each plan that will be voted on will include such census data as necessary to accurately describe the plan and verify the population of each district, and shall include the map and the legal descriptions. And then a final decision of the commission to adopt a redistricting plan requires a majority vote. So out of all of the maps that we had before we voted, we had, I think, 4 of each, I believe. Those were all set forward for the 45-day public comment period. And then when we actually voted, we voted on those particular maps that we decided to move forward. And the way that we voted had to have a supermajority in the fact that at least 2 commissioners affiliating from each political party and 2 commissioners that were of non-affiliation plus 1 person had to vote to approve the particular maps. Next slide, please. And here they are. We have our congressional map, our state Senate map, and our state House map. And all these maps can be viewed in detail at michigan.gov/MICRC. There's a drop down where you can hit view the mapping process, and you can click on final maps. It'll load the web portal minus the ability to leave comments on it, where you can zoom in and see where districts are actually drawn. Just for fun, our congressional map is named Chestnut, our state Senate is named Linden, and our state House was named Hickory. We took trees that were native to Michigan because going after and trying to talk about maps with version 1, reiteration 2.3 kind of got difficult to do. So we decided to go with a with tree names for this. The MICRC commissioned the Glengraph Group to conduct a pre-survey to identify awareness, messaging, and communication mediums to share news about the redistricting process. And here are the key findings. By an overwhelming margin of 65.3% to 10.1%, Michigan voters say that the state should continue with the redistricting commission. 24.4% of voters were undecided or said both the MICRC and the Michigan legislature should be involved. By a margin of 78.4% to 4.7%, voters say that they were aware of the redistricting changes and said Michigan should stay with the redistricting commission. A majority of all party affiliations say Michigan should continue with the redistricting commission to redraw the state maps. Next slide, please. I actually think that's the end of it at this particular point. So we do have some time for questions and answers, I would imagine, Sarah.
Yeah, we do. Before we get to that, I just wanted to note that Bruce Adelson, the commission's Voting Rights Act legal counsel and advisor, is here today. Welcome, Bruce. The commission is experiencing ongoing litigation challenging the maps, and that's to be expected. It's very much par for the course whenever a redistricting cycle occurs. You always assume there's going to be lawsuits, but actually there was an update on one today, and Bruce has offered to give us a brief update about it. So Bruce, if you don't mind, I'll hand it off to you.
No, of course not. Thank you, Sarah. It's my pleasure. It's good to see you again, and Dustin, Rebecca. And yes, today, the Michigan Supreme Court issued a significant decision dismissing the League of Women Voters' challenge to the commission's state legislative maps. The Supreme Court essentially decided that the Redistricting Commission has a lot of discretion in the decisions that it makes, and in adjudicating or deciding the various criteria under the Michigan Constitution and held that there was no evidence to rebut what the commission did, and upheld the legality of the map. So what that basically means is that case is over. This case cannot be appealed to the United States Supreme Court because the issue is purely one of Michigan state law. The US Supreme Court defers to the highest courts of states about their interpretation of what state law says. So this case is over, the challenge is over, and now Michigan continues to join many states as the redistricting process proceeds and as the litigation is all sorted out. So that's just a quick summary. Sarah, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak quickly, and I'm very happy. I saw your Twitter announcement today, and I was able to join you. So thank you very much.
Well, we're so glad to have you. At this point, there is only one remaining legal challenge to the maps in federal court. We'll pay attention to see how that one plays out. And I do have some questions here in the chat. Before we get to the Q&A, I just also wanted to add that the Department of State's role with the Redistricting Commission was to serve as secretary of the commission, secretary without a vote, which means that we provide support to the commission and attend all of the meetings. So I've been to each and every meeting, save one when I was ill, but I still attended remotely. So it's been just such a fun ride, and we'll move on to questions. Did the public comment sections tend to have the same people who attended? Did it tend to have the same people over and over again? Or did you see a different type of turnout at different meetings in the same area? Dustin and Rebecca, I'll hand that off to you.
Yeah, I would say we definitely had what I would call frequent flyers. We had people some of whom attended every meeting or almost every meeting and made comments frequently. And then we had other people who were unique to each particular location. I would say we had more interest later on than in the first round of public hearings. In the first round of public hearings, there's really more of a focus of people who are very into politics who were there. With the second round, I think we had more general community outreach or more general community involvement. But I definitely think it was a mix. It was not all the same people. It was not all unique people. It was definitely a mix. And like I said, we did have those frequent flyers who came to every single meeting, and we started to know them on a first name basis after a while.
Mm-hmm.
It is very true. And one thing that was obvious is when individuals started using form letters. I mean, there were public comments and emails sent where it was verbatim the same thing, and the only thing that was changing was the person's name at the very bottom. I very quickly learned to take those kind of comments with the entire box of salt, as I like to say, instead of just a grain. So, but yes, that it's true. We did have our frequent flyers, and we also had a lot of unique individuals come and give comments.
Thank you.
So I'm going to throw another question your way, and then we have another question in the chat. So one question that we got on an event earlier today that Commissioner Witches was also on that I really enjoyed was what were the working dynamics like between the different affiliation groups? So part of the beauty of this commission is that it's everyday Michiganders. Nobody with lobbying or political experience can be on the commission. It's just a citizens commission. But four of the, as Commissioner Zatella mentioned, 4 of the commissioners must affiliate as Democrat, 4 must affiliate as Republican, and 5 must be non-affiliating with either major party. And we all know that there's a very hyper-partisan environment these days. So when you get 13 individuals with different political outlooks together, it always makes some interesting dynamics. So what was the working relationship like between the different affiliations?
So I honestly don't think for the longest time any of us really paid attention to each other's affiliations until the very end. And the only reason we paid attention to it at the end is we needed to make sure we had what we called the 222 to pass a map. No one who was on the commission who attended our in-person meetings that I saw really had a strong political leaning one way or another. Obviously, people would sometimes have differences of opinions, but I never got the feeling that any one of our commissioners was pushing a particular agenda or pushing for, quote unquote, their side over the needs of general Michiganders. Everybody seemed to have a very strong anchoring in the concept that we were representing all of Michigan and that our job was to come up with the best and fairest maps that we could. And so I think that sort of central bond that tied us all together allowed us to work together in a very collegial way and to come to compromises and come up with, what I think were very good maps.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The camaraderie that we all had with each other basically outweighed any kind of political leanings that anyone may have had. For the longest time, I didn't even know who affiliated with what particular political ideology, as you could call it, with the different commissioners that we had. Again, towards the end, things started to get a little heated in certain situations where we had to come up with compromises. But as far as the grand scheme of things went, we all got along swimmingly. And we never really had any arguments or anything like that. We were all working together for a common goal, which we did achieve.
Thank you. All right, our next question is from Chloe. First, Chloe wrote a thank you for posting some of the maps online for comments, saying it was a great learning tool for students to see what people were saying about districts. It was also a great learning tool for the commissioners to learn what people were saying about their districts too. So that's great, Chloe. And your question was about one of the more controversial areas that were mapped by the commission. That would be Midland. The commission definitely got a lot of public comment about Midland. Can you talk a little bit about the mapping process in some of these more controversial areas that you had received a lot of public comment about, and what it was like weighing the public comment when you had just as much public comment saying to do something as opposed to not doing something, and how you all navigated those types of situations?
Yeah, so I think Midland is an interesting case because we have Midland Township and Midland City. And I would say that we received some pretty overwhelming comments from Midland City that they considered themselves to be part of the Tri-City areas, which is Bay City and Saginaw. And it seemed like the overwhelming desire of people in Midland City was to be part of the Tri-Cities. We also received very abundant comment from Midland Township residents, which is the more rural area, saying that they wanted to be included with Midland City. And so my personal view on that, having heard all of the comments, was that Midland Township can't claw Midland City away from Saginaw and Bay. And if Midland Township wants to be part with Midland City, then that means they're going to be combined with Saginaw and Bay, because that's what both groups are asking for. So Midland Township wants to be with Midland City, fine. Midland City wants to be with Bay and Saginaw, fine. We can accommodate everybody's desires. But what we started to see more was that Midland Township didn't just want to be with Midland City, they wanted to make sure Midland City wasn't with Saginaw and Bay. And so from my perspective and a lot of other commissioners' perspective, we talked a lot about those comments and had a lot of discussion about it. And I think the takeaway in everybody's mind is that, one group can't claw another group away from where they want to be. And so that was how we resolved that particular issue. But we certainly received a lot of public comments about it. We had to filter through those public comments and decide about the best way to handle it. And that was how we resolved that particular issue. But I think in every instance, it was really just about talking through the comments, weighing them, listening to what people were saying, and then using our own common sense to come up with solutions that we thought would best fit what the communities of interest were and how we could accommodate them in the maps.
Yeah, but that's accurate. I would have to agree with that as well. As far as I go, we try to do a quick compromise with us saying, okay, we can have Saginaw and Bay City together in, let's say, one particular district map, and then the House, we can split them with a more rural side, and then congressional, we can go all the way down to Flint. But it also came down to common sense. I mean, Michigan, Bay City, Saginaw, as far as I'm concerned, is they're the Tri-Cities, and they've been the Tri-Cities for quite some time. And we have also we had a commissioner on the commission that was from the area and said the same thing. I mean, you share an airport, MBS, Michigan Bay City, Saginaw. I've personally flown into that airport myself. So it became, for me, it became a common sense issue. And I could see the argument saying, well, the rural side wants to be more rural. Fine, because we did hear that throughout the entire state, saying the rural areas wanted to remain more rural, urban areas more urban. But Midland City, in my opinion, is not urban. I'm sorry, Midland City is urban. Midland Township is not. So what we did is we took the best that we could to keeping urban together, rural together, so that we can make everyone equally unhappy in how they wanted the maps to be drawn.
Great. I think that this conversation too kind of goes to show the importance of public comment in the process and how much you all actually really listen to it, read it, and really embrace the public comment process to inform your work. I think a lot of times among young people and college students, there's almost like a vibe of apathy, that, you know, my vote doesn't matter or my voice doesn't matter. And so I don't want to participate in the civic process. But I think that this, how the redistricting process specifically unfolded, kind of really is counter to that belief, because every public comment really was considered. I witnessed myself, you all, furiously reading public comments before, during, and after public meetings. And I know that you pointed to specific public comments while you were engaged in the mapping process. And speaking of that, we have a question from Katie. Katie wants to know how college campuses were viewed as a COI and if the college communities were difficult to navigate.
Dustin, you want to take this one first, or you want me to go?
So I found that a difficult thing to think about. Are colleges communities of interest? Yes, they're all college students, but colleges also have residents that are there for maybe 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, so on and so forth. So is it a permanent community of interest? I would say no. Is it a temporary community of interest based on the people that live there? Yes. And they do have unique needs, but those needs change every 4 years, 5 years, 6 years when the new body of students come to that particular university, wherever it may be, whether it's here, California, Florida, it all changes. So I did take it into account, saying, yeah, you know, students can register to vote in Michigan if they're attending college here, if they choose to. But a lot of individuals don't do that, and they retain their voting registration where they come from. And they never change their address, which is also perfectly fine. So the way that I went about it was take it into account, but also take into account the residents of the area around the city and listen to how they want the actual college or campus to be split. If it was a large college campus like Ann Arbor, for example, which is basically all of Ann Arbor. And that was a point of contention of how we were going to split Ann Arbor as well, knowing that if we had to draw lines in Ann Arbor, we were very aware that we were most likely going to have to split the college and campus because it's just so large. So that was my take on it.
Yeah, so I would just add that the colleges were particularly difficult for us. You know, we received comments from students who wanted their college sort of service area to be included, and those areas did tend to be kind of sprawling and oftentimes crossing over into other communities of interest. We particularly saw that in Oakland County with Oakland University, where what would have been defined as the Oakland University college community of interest covered over different municipalities that were asking to be put together in different ways. So it was definitely a challenge for us. And then on the flip side, we received some, you know, I found them kind of humorous because they were so hostile, comments about people who are in the more rural areas not wanting to be put together with those college students, those awful college students. So we received some comments about that as well, about people not wanting to be put together with college students. But I think the commission's general view on those kind of comments in general is that you don't get to, again, you don't get to clause someone else out of their community of interest, but you also don't get to say, I don't want to be with them. We in general rejected those sort of comments across the board, where someone would say, you know, just don't put me with those people over there, because we just didn't consider that to be our job. And we didn't consider don't put me with that person to be a valid community of interest. So yeah, the colleges were definitely hard. We tried to do the best we can. One of the most unique comments I think we heard, and Dustin will probably agree with this, is we had someone who identified the entirety of the University of Michigan and Michigan State campuses as one college or one community of interest, with this huge diagonal line going from Ann Arbor to Lansing. And obviously we couldn't accommodate that, but we did try to accommodate some of the other communities of interest that were identified related to colleges.
And just another thing I wanted to add to that, and Rebecca's just said, it's like a community of interest is not where you want to be. And I was one that was really vocal about that. And another thing is in regards to college campuses, if you look at my alma mater, which is EMU, it's a commuter campus. So how can someone argue that that particular campus is a community of interest when you have so many people commuting from different areas throughout the state to that university on a daily basis? So again, some colleges aren't like that, some are, and we had to eventually make decisions. And I think we did do the right thing to handle every university and college in the state of Michigan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's interesting the decision points that you encounter, that as a commissioner going into mapping, you never would have thought of. Like, for example, do you classify a college or community or university campus as a COI? And do you make those considerations when you're drawing maps? Fortunately, anyone who wanted to peek into the decision-making process was able to do so, because this was such a hugely transparent process. Redistricting previous to this cycle was done in closed door sessions, and no one was really allowed in. Public input was not a part of the process. But while the Redistricting Commission this year was drawing new maps, every single mapping session was live streamed, and every single mapping session featured a public comment session. So it was really a remarkable change for the better in our state. We're grateful for the work that you, Commissioner Satella and Commissioner Witches, have done, and really appreciate you taking the time being with us here today. So thank you so much. We'll now be moving into our breakout session. So Landon, I will hand it off to you.
I forgot I was supposed to thank Landon before I started, and I failed to do that. I am so sorry, because he assisted with coordinating so many of these college campus visits that we had, and we truly appreciate those efforts to help us coordinate, because we did go to multiple universities throughout the state of Michigan to engage with the college age students, and we do absolutely appreciate those efforts on his behalf to help us do that. So I'm sorry I forgot to mention you. I meant to mention you in the beginning, and I just got distracted.
MVP.
No worries. Thank you for coming to all the campuses and being a part of that too, and willingly collaborating. So that was awesome. Great. So I will be opening breakout rooms here in just a second. Right now, I am putting 3 things in chat we would like you to chat about. We'll also have Campus Vote Project Democracy Fellows in the room to take notes. So we'll have notes afterwards. But what's working well on your campus you're doing right now? What resources would be most helpful for your campus for this upcoming fall election? And then, as Sarah mentioned earlier, the student voting website is being revamped. So what do you want on the student election website? What would be helpful to have on there? So I'm going to break us out into 4 breakout rooms. And if we could chat through those 3 things, we'll have about 10 minutes, and then we'll return and do a share out. So here we go. Hello.
Are you done?
No, they're in breakout rooms.
Oh. We just, what time does this end?
12, 13 minutes,
Huh?
4:30.
All right.
Why?
Well, no, I was just
Oh, okay.
checking in.
Oh, yep, we're gonna probably break out of breakout rooms in like 5 minutes, and then do a share out from that, and then closing remarks, and then we're done.
All right. Me, Landon, and Ricardo, not Landon, Alexis and Ricardo and I just had a nice chat. So message me after. Oh wait, Sarah Reinhardt just invited me. I'll pop into a breakout. Goodbye.
Bye. Hello, welcome back.
Hi. Landon, just letting you know, so sorry, but if we reach 4:30, I'm just gonna have to.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries, you're good. Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. I think the rooms are now closed. How was that? Let's share out. Let's go to the rooms. And I don't know if you know the room number, so I'm just gonna, I think I know about who is in every room. So if someone, either Penny, Norma, or Allie want to share.
I can share. I took some notes. So we talked about what's working well on your campus. We talked a lot about talking to people one-on-one and like getting them in situations where they're not rushing and feel like overwhelmed and nervous. And so trying to get in more of those situations, like going into classes and such. Resources that would be helpful for our campus. We talked about having like really clear and concise resources that are sort of more simple and don't use a lot of terms that people can't really understand. And like have it all in one place. And we also talked a lot more about having more availability to that state information. Norma talked about that a lot and about how a lot of times the elections that really impact us are ones that are at the state level. Going out of like the student election website, we really talked about how we wanted it to be like clean, clear, and readily available, and kind of have that importance of how to educate for how to register and such when you're out of college and high school and all those things where you get these resources kind of passed to you, and having information about what different elections mean and stuff like that, because a lot of people really don't have that information. But that's mainly what we talked about. If either of the other ladies want to add anything.
Awesome. I think that's great. And we are a little bit short on time, so I may not go around to every room, but I do want to hear from one or two other people if there was something you want to share out to the group. Riley's going to get one more, so.
I can share something really quick that maybe doesn't directly answer any of your questions, but I think like for me personally was really encouraging to hear that like here at CMU, maybe we don't have a lot of institutional support, but someone from Oakland that has a lot of institutional support, in my eyes, I'm like, you must have everything together. You must be perfect. And they're facing just as many challenges in different ways. So maybe it's a little disheartening, but for me, it's almost encouraging to know that like, we will never have some perfect voting thing right now. We can rely on each other. My strengths are someone else's weaknesses. Like that was just encouraging to hear.
Awesome.
And then if I may, one of the things I heard in my group about the website as well was information about how to update your voter registration address, like very clear, since students are really transient. But if anyone else has anything that they discussed about the student voter website, we're in the process of redesigning, so you'll have direct input right here now. So would love to hear any other thoughts.
One thought we talked about was how would, is there a way for the website to talk about how various careers are impacted by voting and legislation? Because we're running into that. How do you convince your science people that in fact it makes a difference if they vote? How do you convince your teacher education people that it's important? So maybe even a portion of the website that could address those kinds of things with concrete examples could be helpful.
That's great. Why does voting matter if you're an economics major or something like that, or if you're a STEM person? That's very cool. I like that idea.
If I could piggyback off of that really quick, my group talked about kind of in a similar way of students care a lot about a lot of issues, but I don't always think they and this is what my group was talking about too, is that they don't always connect them to the policy and the ballot initiatives and all these things that go in line with the issues that they care about. And so like, just making sure that bridge is there between like, if you care about voter rights, well, here are all the current proposals to change voting rights or anything like that, where it's the issues are connected to the exact policies and things to vote on.
That's great. Any other thoughts before we wrap things up? Okay.
Awesome. Well, I think I'll actually pass it off to Sarah then to give an update about the task force.
About, oh, sorry. I thought you said test course. I was like,
Oh,
what?
no tests. Luckily, no tests.
Yeah, so some of you may be aware that we are reseating the Collegiate Student Voting Task Force for 2022. We just wrapped up interviews for candidates last week, and we are in the process of making selections for appointments. For those that don't know, the College Task Force is a group of college students that are appointed by Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson to the task force to serve in an advisory capacity. We're going to have approximately 2 individuals per campus, and we're hopeful for representation from as many campuses across the state as possible. And they will help our office encourage voter engagement and serve as our liaison to be a trusted source of information on their campuses and an agent to increase civic participation. So you can look out for the names of those appointed. We'll probably do a press release in the coming weeks, and we're super excited. The first task force was just super instrumental in our college engagement, especially whenever COVID hit. So I imagine this task force will just really hit the ground running as soon as they're seated with some really cool initiatives and ideas.
Awesome. And then just a quick update on my end of things. Of course, if your campus wants to work more with CVP, feel free to reach out with me. I feel like most people on this call I work with quite a bit already, but always there as a resource, always happy to meet. Also, Campus Vote Project is helping with Promote the Vote to get signatures on that. So if your campus is interested in having students circulate, also feel free to reach out to me on that, and I can provide you resources or just talk about Promote the Vote and what it does. But yeah, that's going to conclude the end of this summit. And thank you all for coming. I think it's gone really great. And if you have any questions or anything else, I'll be happy to stick around a few minutes. But at this point, this is the rest of the scheduled programming. So everyone is all set to log off. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
And I'm happy to stick around too for a few minutes if anyone has any questions or thoughts that you wanted to share. And I also threw my email in the chat. Really want to serve as a resource to any college students who want to get engaged or promote voter registration or participation on their campuses. So don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll help in any way I can. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Sarah, do we know if there are going to be mobile SOSs this fall?
There will be. I don't think we have plans to do the campus tour. That was one of the staples for our mobile office in previous years. We're refocusing mobile branch offices more so on reaching communities that are like what we consider access communities that have limited access to Secretary of State services, like limited English proficiency communities where we can hire interpreters to be on hand, or areas that are that there's like a Secretary of State kind of black hole around there. But with that said, we are trying to increase efforts to reach out to campuses and communities to make sure that they understand how to do business with the Secretary of State office, online transactions, because that's a huge thing, especially for college students, just doing it from your dorm room or your couch or wherever you're at. And also making sure they have, as we mentioned in the presentation, just resources to be informed about voting.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
See you.
Hi, Norma. Actually talking about that, it has an idea too, of just like, I think why a lot of campuses are asking about that is just the promotion they could do around having the mobile unit come to campus.
Mhm.
And so I don't think the big fact was actually having like, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can like get the promotion without having it be like resource intensive on your end, because I don't think the staff members are what was the huge help, because they could have students help register. I think it was really almost like having like the Secretary of State is on camp, like the mobile units on campus
Yeah.
for that. And it was the promotional aspect. So like, is there a way we can bring the promotional aspect of it without like the resources that it costs to have like the van coming around?
Yeah, I think you definitely could, especially with having task force members.
Ooh,
I
that's a
don't
good
know
idea.
why they decided to do away with the college tour, if it was because there was just like a limited turnout, or if transactions were mostly limited to like voter registration or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think that like kind of trying to plan something like that, that's like an event that can be promoted and people can get excited about without having to have like a mobile office there. Yeah, I think that's
And I think it makes sense on their end, why, because like it was mostly voter registration stuff, because that's
Was
what the
it?
campuses, I think that's what because that's what the campuses really appreciated it for and used it as,
Yeah.
was a chance to get students out to get registered to vote. So if we could have like a promotional way of like, we don't need like a whole staff system of a Secretary of State branch office like mobile, because that's not what the campuses were really using it for and wanted it for. They wanted it to be able to use it as promotion to get registration out.
That's a good idea for the task force to like plan like a day that is like your campus's voter registration day if they don't already have one, and like make sure that it's like Secretary of State.
Maybe like big signs, like instead of having a van, we can just do big signs we take to all the campuses.
Yeah.
And that it will like really help with promotion of like having like
I like
Secretary of
that.
State like branding stuff.
That's cool. Cool. Well, high five, Landon.
Yes, I think that went well. So
Yeah, it went really
thank you.
well. Very good.
And I think there's going to be about what 35 more people registered who weren't on the session, so the recording will go out to them and they'll have that. So
Very good. All right. Well, anything we need to touch base on before we hop off?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty set. I really appreciate it. I think this went really well, and I thanks for all the work you did to put it together. So
You bet. This is fun. I'm glad to be here, excited to be here. I was so stoked that Bruce showed up.
yes, that was cool.
He was on the main session too, and he messaged me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, he's so nice. Just a really great person. So that was
Also, I don't know if you know Chuck, but this is Chuck. He's the Midwest Regional Manager for Campus Vote Project. So
Hi, Chuck. Good to meet you.
The Pennsylvania Secretary of State's office will often comment how they like to copy what your office does. So I enjoy to see any sort of, rival.
That's so funny. I love that. I actually copied some of their graphics one time because they had a really cool like graphic theme. So I guess it kind of goes both ways a little bit.
Exactly.
That's so funny. Yeah, that was cool. I was gonna say something, but now I don't remember what it was. Oh, I was gonna tell you, I'm from Missouri. But I'm from Kansas City, so I basically lived on both sides of the border with Missouri and Kansas, and then I briefly lived in Ohio after I graduated for a couple of years.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, so I've lived in quite a few of these states, and so I was seeing a lot of like names and faces that I knew during the main regional summit. So I was like messaging people like, hi, it was really neat. Very well attended, it seemed, and looks like it was pretty successful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool. All right, well, I'm gonna hop off. I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Awesome.
Thank you,
so much.
Sarah.
Take care.
All right, cool. We'll hop off too. So
All right, peace.
bye.